Travelers are streaming into China by air, land and sea as China reopens borders that have been all but shut since the start of COVID-19 pandemic. After 3 years, mainland China has opened sea and land crossings with Hong Kong and ended a requirement for incoming travelers to quarantine, dismantling a final pillar of a zero-COVID policy that has shielded China and the world from a COVID infection risk. The reopening is expected to reinvigorate a $17 trillion economy suffering its slowest growth in nearly half a century. But the abrupt policy reversal has triggered a massive wave of infections that is overwhelming hospitals and crematoriums. As Xi Jinping's greed for investment and desperation for economic growth grows, China is putting more lives at risk by claiming there have been only 2 COVID deaths just 3 days after claiming 5,000 COVID deaths. It's time then for the WHO and the West to speak up against China's blatant lies. Colonel J.S. Sori, Foreign Affairs expert, is joining us live. Dr. P.S.V. Rao, Consultant Surgeon, Manipal Hospital, Hebbal, Bengaluru, is joining us live as well. Vijay Kranti, Foreign Affairs expert, is with us live. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, Chairman, Nephron Clinic, is also with us on the broadcast. Let me begin with you first, Dr. Bagai. Medically speaking, China clearly putting a lot of people at risk, isn't it? Dr. Bagai, are you being able to hear me? All right, we're having some trouble there, it seems, with this connection. Dr. P.S.V. Rao, let me attempt to go to you if you can hear me. Dr. Rao?
Good evening.
Yes, Dr. Rao, your takes, medically speaking, on how big a risk this poses for the globe.
Good evening, Uday, and to all the panelists and viewers. Yes, it is like a pressure cooker situation. They have kept everyone locked up all these days. And then suddenly they want to open up everything. And there are accusations of they giving false RT-PCR negative tests. This is the reason why the Italians found that half the plane load of people who landed up there from China were actually positive for COVID. So if they repeat this, what they did 3 years ago, they are spreading whatever new variants of the virus to all parts of the world. And after what happened in Milan, in Italy, it is obvious that we can't believe their RT-PCR negative tests, which will force nations to repeat the RT-PCR tests on arrival and to quarantine forcibly everyone till the RT-PCR test comes negative. So I see this problem has become a global problem now, and the Chinese New Year is only going to start from 11th, after which the problem is going to be far more, because Chinese New Year, they have already predicted, will involve 2 billion flights. That is, I think, 1 billion people flying 2 ways. 1 billion Chinese let loose on the world. You can imagine what is going to happen with all their infection. We in India are in a better position because of the hybrid immunity which is already in place. We have discussed this many times before. But that is no guarantee that we will be totally safe. We need to be concerned about it. We need to use our masks and COVID restrictions which are already being put in place. And many people have called for a total ban on flights from China. But last time we were among the earliest nations to ban flights from China. But the virus came through the back door, through Italy, through the Middle East, etc. So even if we ban all flights from China, there is no guarantee we won't get it. And I have recently been invited to Japan for the Asian conference, Surgeons Conference. But in Japan, they are having their 8th wave. Unbelievable, but true. This is because of the large number of Chinese who have landed up in Japan. They are again having a big wave. And I think this is why the Indian government has put restrictions on flights coming in from Japan, China, South Korea, Taiwan, etc., and Singapore, where a lot of Chinese keep traveling up and down. So even if we ban flights from China, there is no guarantee the virus will land up here. And another thing which we can feel a bit more reassured is 2 more vaccines have come into the market. One is a nasal vaccine from Bharat Biologicals, and another is Covovax from Serum Institute of India. And both companies are claiming that these vaccines are far more effective against the new variants of the virus, of the coronavirus. So these are the claims, but we'll have to see how effective they are. And nasal vaccine will be a much easier thing to administer, and it will give us local immunity, which should block spread of the virus much more effectively than when you are given injections. So these are the positive factors, and we have a well-oiled machinery, vaccination machinery, which is in place. So I think that will work. And the other thing is, here in Karnataka, we had in December, the Karnataka government was worried that a lot of Covishield doses are going to go waste and going to expire. And then 2 weeks later, the news is that there is shortage. All Covishield vaccine doses have got used up, and there is now a shortage. So that means there was a sudden spurt in the people accepting booster doses. So this is what we can do. We use a mask. Here in Karnataka, they have already made it compulsory in schools, colleges, and all crowded places. So I think we need to use the measures that we are already familiar with, and hope that our herd immunity will keep us safe. Over to you, Uday.
Okay, let me in fact also take that across to our other guests now, who are also with us on the broadcast. Let me bring in Vijay Kranti. Vijay Kranti, now obviously this was bound to happen in China. You know, this is what the entire world has been doing, and one cannot fault China for also lifting restrictions. But the fact, Vijay Kranti, is that they're doing it very, very irresponsibly, and they're doing it very, very unscientifically. You know, the world has seen lockdowns and then restrictions lifted, but it was all done in a very prudent manner. Here you have had a bizarre zero COVID policy, and now suddenly a complete reopening ahead of Chinese New Year's. I mean, this is disastrous and unscientific and irresponsible, to say the very least. But but does China care? Is the big question, Vijay.
Yeah, the question, does China care? I think everybody has the answer, and we have seen China behaving for the last 3 years on all accounts. Well, number one, they were hiding all information, even about the breakout, even about the nature of the virus which had broken out, or more than that, they didn't allow any country, any institution, including the WHO, for many months to join hands, and otherwise, the scientists across the world and WHO themselves could have done much better in understanding the nature of the virus, and in developing different defensive measures. But anyhow, because Xi Jinping specially, I name him because in China it is only one person who takes decisions, and then the rest system follows. Xi Jinping has been quite deceptive. Earlier, as I said, and everybody knows, he has been hiding information. And now when things have gone beyond his control, when in a China where nobody for last 70 years could dare to speak or raise a finger against the Communist Party of China or any leader, the senior leader of the party and in the government, and if anybody did it, they were simply consigned to the jails and to the firing squads. And now, when Xi Jinping has suddenly found so much of pressure from the people, and millions of people came on roads and protested against him, now I think he's taking a kind of revenge. And revenge is on two levels. One is his own people, because he could never see that people will oppose him or raise a finger against him. So he has opened the gates, floodgates for the Chinese people. And to me, it appears as if he has said, okay, now you suffer. And more than that, now he is using the Chinese citizens as another war weapon against the rest of the world. This timing, as you pointed out, New Year, is not something, a sudden thing. it appears to be very calculated one. In 2020, when the virus broke out, it was the New Year China, when millions of Chinese travel within China, but in millions, they travel to so many countries, and from other countries where they are working as workers and as scientists, as business people, they travel back to China, and they spread the virus to every country. But now this time, Xi Jinping, Chinese government, WHO, all the governments knew very well that New Year is a very, very sensitive time. And suddenly opening, when Xi Jinping raises the barriers and allows everybody to travel anywhere, and especially for foreign travels, that I think is a very calculated biological weapon. He is using his people as a biological weapon against the entire world, and world should be worried about it. I'll give you some statistics. I was writing last week. I was writing an analysis of the situation, and I was shocked to discover that there are 228 countries. There are statistics which were released by World Meters Info and WHO, etc. And I was surprised to see that out of 228 countries, the Chinese figures of number of infected people and people who died of COVID-19 stands at 102. 102nd position is China. And see, the countries, Cuba, Nepal, Latvia, Cyprus, and Reunion, they are far above China. They had more deaths, more cases, and China had less cases. And it was laughable that in the case of Honduras, Honduras is a very small country, which has hardly little more than 1 crore people. They had 4.63 lakh of cases, and the total number of deaths was 11,063 till last week. And when you compare it with China, you are surprised that what kind of magic Xi is playing, because he reported that there were only 41.2 lakh Chinese who were infected, and out of that only 5,245 died. Can you believe it? The total number of deaths in a country with 140 plus crore people, the number of deaths is less than half of Honduras. This only shows that he is trying to, fool the world. But here I would conclude by saying Xi Jinping, Communist Party of China, the Chinese government are used to fooling the world. But the world has had enough of experience, and they should not have allowed them to be fooled. Number one, all the countries must have put foot down and blocked any flights from China, at least till this the flood of new Chinese year is over. They should not have allowed. And now many countries are allowing the certificate of no COVID issued by Chinese doctors to the Chinese citizens who are flying to Italy, to America, to so many countries. And as just now Dr. Rao pointed out, that in one plane load of Chinese travelers in Italy, they found most of them had the certificate, but more than half of them were infected. So I think, number one, the Indian government should put foot down, should completely block any Chinese citizen entering India, and anybody who has been living in China for a few months should not be allowed to enter India till the new Chinese New Year period is over. And the rest of countries, they should also put restrictions. And one, as I have said many times, this is high time. The world community should stand up and start a kind of what you call, a litigation against Chinese government for compensation for all the losses of lives, of social discomfort, and also the economic loss to the countries. China should be made to pay this. Unless the world community goes to that extent, I don't think Xi Jinping is going to stop playing all these games. Uday, over to you.
All right, let me in fact take that across to Colonel J.S. Sodhi as well. Colonel J.S. Sodhi, on what's really the result of the zero COVID policy according to you? Is this admission of complete failure, the way China has gone about reopening? Does this, serve as a public acknowledgement that zero COVID has not worked for them?
Jai Hind, Uday, it's my honor to be on a news channel and a privilege to be with the esteemed co-panelist. The irresponsible and ill-considered decision of China to reopen its borders in view of its New Year on January 22nd is a deadly and a dangerous decision taken by them, because it is once again going to infect the whole world. The same mistake they had done in end 2019 when they hid all this information, as a result of which till date 6.85 million people have died because of COVID-19, and yet again they are taking wrong decisions. What is surprising, Uday, is that the whole world is helpless against China. China with its deep pockets, and like the famous saying goes, that money makes the mayor go. China with its deep pockets has been able to get away with mass genocide. I would call it genocide. And the whole world, especially the powerful West, the World Health Organization, are all mute spectators. Uday, till date, the maximum number of vaccines approved for any nation is 9 for China. And look what is happening in China. Because China controls WHO. In fact, WHO should be renamed to China Health Organization and its headquarters moved from Geneva, Switzerland to Beijing, China. Because China has a full control of WHO and no country has been able to do anything to it. The only one international leader who spoke openly against this China virus was the former US President Donald Trump, and he too lost in the elections. So as we see more and more people dying, more and more people getting infected the world over, it is China, it is Chinese Communist Party, it is Xi Jinping who's having the last laugh. While millions die, millions get affected, it is just not moving China at all.
Okay, let me take that straight across to Dr. Sanjeev Bagai as well. I'm being told he is back with us now on the broadcast and he's able to hear me. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai,
Yes,
your reading of events in China, how you are viewing this reopening, do you believe it's completely unscientific? Do you believe it's irresponsible? Also, how should the world be viewing it? Should they be scared and concerned?
good evening, everyone. I think you will be at loss of words to describe how untrustworthy, irresponsible, unscientific, unethical, camouflaged and opaque society China is. Apart from the fact that medically they are in the dumps because their vaccines didn't work right from the inception, very poor vaccine strategy, a large section of the population, province by province, has been left vulnerable. And now with the sudden opening, it's been a sheer disaster. The zero COVID policy is equivalent to zero intelligence. It has never worked in the last 100 odd years of medicine worldwide, and I don't know why this gentleman has walked that path. I see two events happening. One is in the short term and the second is in the long term. In the short term, I think we'll see a lot of deaths and a lot of cover-up operations as far as China is concerned. I don't trust any data coming out of China, and it is futile even to expect an iota of truth as far as they are concerned. We will continue to see certain new mutations. They may not be as lethal as Delta in the second wave as we saw in India, but we will continue to see. But what we really need to do immediately in the short term is we need to start planning a new bivalent vaccine and focus on the intranasal vaccine. Going forward, long term, I think the impact of this disaster which China has created worldwide is going to have a long-lasting, not only a ripple effect, but a huge wave as far as China is concerned. I think corporate after corporate, large MNCs are going to move out. They've already started moving out of China. India is the best destination close by and a lot better. And I think economically and socially, China is going to take a huge hit. I think their political strength is going to take a huge hit. The downfall of China is already started. I don't know whether they can see the writing on the wall or not, but I think it's pretty much evident. There will be some tipping point in the global history very soon in which some good nations, brave nations, conviction-filled nations will gather the moral integrity to stand up against China and block them off economically. Having a war is no solution, but I think if you suffocate them socially and economically, that's what's actually happening in a subtle manner, but I think it will catch wind. The downfall of China is already started, and I think it's a disaster to be born in China.
All right, let me leave it at that. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion. It's time for a very short break. Much more coming up.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.